Hello friends, how are you? I'm Mari Ferger and today I'm going to talk about the rune Tiwaz. The rune representative of the god Tyr. Therefore, it is a rune often related to justice and also sacrifice. But sometimes these two aspects are not that often elaborate because there is a lot we can say about justice and sacrifice. But there is little comprehension about the true meaning of justice and sacrifice implied in this rune. What some understand to be just and fair might be unjust and unfair to others, obviously. More often than not, we deal out justice blindly, and our means of punishment to a specific person ends up being the exact same crime we are condemning that person of. Justice is a balance created by a state of deep wisdom, which can only be found by reaching a higher state of rationality. And the sacrifice here expressed in this rune is the sacrifice of the individual self for the well-being of the whole. The sacrifice here expressed is understanding that there are things far more important than we as individual creatures. And sometimes the best thing we can provide for a greater good is to sacrifice ourselves for the benefit of others. It's a rune that denies all sorts of selfish thoughts and actions. Tiwaz is a rune of honor, righteousness, fairness, keeping the peace, right action. A rune of loyalty, rationality, honesty, faith, and all these aspects lead to victory. But this victory is the ultimate expression of spiritual will, which we have been building up in a very long process of the development of a sense of judgment, which is the result of higher rationality provoked by deep wisdom. Because the more we know about ourselves, we will start to notice that others aren't that different from us. And we continue to go down this path of trying to understand human behavior, the inner battles people are fighting, the traumas and fears they have, what motivates them, what drives them to do the things they do. A new scenery of perception is opened up before us. There is comprehension, understanding, reasoning, and we build up empathy, which is the basis of justice. There is no justice without fairness, and there is no fairness without empathy. So Tiwaz represents this very, very long and arduous development of empathy and rationality. And I think this is why Tiwaz is the representation of the spiritual warrior. A warrior rune named after the god Tyr, who is the Norse god of law and justice. Tyr is the god of passive regulation, and it's the only divine force that comes closer to the transcendental quality, meaning reaching a spiritual state that can never be understood by ordinary explanations, and it's purely an individual experience achieved by the long efforts in the development of personal understanding. But let's take a look at some of the myths so we might better understand this rune. Tiwaz was the only Germanic god who was already important in Indo-European times, the same god of the continental Germans called Thew. And to the Scandinavians, in Old Norse it was Tyr. Tiwaz was originally the supreme deity of the old Germans, the god of war and justice, who ruled from the skies. He wasn't just a god of the sky, but also of the storm, of thunder and lightning, which was the expression of his power, until his position as a chief deity and ruler god was shaken by the rise of the cult of Thor and Odin. Odin, as the god of warlords, god of wisdom, wind, storm and death, replaced Tyr as chief of the heavens, and Thor took over the role of warrior and champion of the gods. In Norse mythology, Tyr is portrayed as the most heroic and honorable of the gods. The gods seek to bind the great wolf Fenrir, and several attempts were made, until, through magic, trickery and deceit, they came to him with chains impossible to break. When the gods approached Fenrir with the magical chains, the great wolf becomes suspicious and demands that one of the gods places an arm in his mouth as a token of faith. Only Tyr comes forward. He is honorable and brave and has nothing to fear, for he is no god of trickery and deceit. When Fenrir finds he has been tricked and bound forever, he bites off Tyr's hand. His hand was sacrificed to trick the wolf into being chained. Tyr loses his hand as a pledge. The gods made promises to the great wolf, but the gods broke their oaths. And by breaking an oath, there must be punishment. Tyr sacrifices himself for the gods. He is the one punished by the oath-breaking of the gods. He sacrifices himself for something he did not do, but it was something greater than him, binding chaos to bring order into the universe of the gods and mankind. The loss of the hand was, or forswearing oaths is documented in many cultures, and it was a punishment for perjury. Tyr is honorable, he is fair and just, and he accepted the punishment for the breaking of an oath, for the lies that tricked the great wolf into being chained. There was no honor in this event, and Tyr knew it, and this sense of justice spoke higher. To rule justly, one is asked to make many self-sacrifices, and Tyr represents in part the development of the power of positive self-sacrifice, being faithful to the belief that a right cause is worth the sacrifice. But only a courageous spirit is able to take that next step in the name of a greater good. Tyr doesn't play the role of the tyrant of the sky, as many gods do, such as Odin. Tyr plays the role of the wise ruler, just and fair, honorable, whose right past actions lead to victory. This might be far-fetched, but the shape of the rune Tiwaz certainly resembles a column, and above it, it looks like a stylized representation of a roof. It might be that this roof is the representation of the belief in the dome of the earth, the separation between the mortal world and what lies beyond. In a certain way, a shield. And the column is the world column, the world axis. Therefore, perhaps the stylized representation of Yggdrasil, the tree trunk and the tree canopy. The Saxons represented the world tree, or the axis mundi, with Irminsul. Irminsul might have been a tree or a great pole, but its main importance was that it represented sacred ground. Therefore, the place in which it stood represented holy ground, hallowed ground, where the spiritual essence was felt more intensely, serving the same purpose of the menhirs, the standing stones, a cult place. And the vertical structure marked the place where the energy of the earth was stronger, where the life force of the earth could be felt more profoundly, more intensely, where the spiritual manifestation was greater, therefore a sacred place. Now remember the case of the needstang, the kneading pole, as I've previously spoken on my latest video. One of the main purposes of the kneading pole was to disempowering the ground. It was intended to disrupt and anger the spirits of place, to banish them and drive them away, leaving the soils spiritually dead. So its main purpose was to desecrate areas of ground, taking away the sacredness of the place, banishing all the spiritual entities that made the place alive and their spiritual force was beneficial for the human communities. The Irminsul, or another representation of a sacred post, was to provoke the exact opposite of that of the Nidstang. It was to concentrate the spiritual energy of the area into that one place, where the symbol of power stood, just like the standing stones. When the Irminsul was brought down by the Christians, that's why the Germanic peoples lost all their hope, because the sacredness of the place was lost. The land spirits were banished. The ground became spiritually dead, unholy. In a way, I think the rune Tiwaz represents the axis mundi, the world pillar, the representation of the god Tyr on earth. Tyr is, in the sky, is the representation of the principal force of divine order or over the multiverse. And as such, the rune Tiwaz, as the representation of the axis mundi, the world pillar, the sacred world tree, symbolizes the positive ordering of the cosmos and humankind through law and justice, and it stands as a moral compass. The world pillar maintains world order and protects humankind, represented by the dome of the tree, or the dome of the earth, or the tree canopy. It protects from ultimate destruction. So this rune, in this way, represents awakened consciousness, the guiding principle that carries out wakefulness, the awareness of the chaotic and orderly forces of the universe, brought together into a single point where all energies converge to create a balance. The world pillar represents this point of convergence of energy, just as we, as spiritual individuals, stand on the earth as multiple world pillars in our own fashion, and both the forces of chaos and order converge to us. Inside us, they flow in and out, and the consciousness is awakened. And once again, we return to the idea of the spiritual warrior, represented in this rune, when the mind reaches a higher sense of rationality. Now let's see the meaning of this rune when it appears in a rune reading. Tiwaz is the rune of justice and sacrifice, honor, righteousness, the spiritual warrior. This is the rune that ensures right decision making, a rune of fairness and making peace. Analyzing our attitudes often comes to the realization of self-sacrifice. The sacrifices made to reach the point where we are right now, but also the self-sacrifices that have to continue to be made in order to continue the flow of luck, success, prosperity, to reach our objectives and therefore to achieve victory. While using any method for a rune reading, when this rune appears in its upright position, it gives us an indication of oaths of some sort, the fulfillment of promises, a worthy promise made under the right conditions and for honorable reasons should and indeed must be kept. The appearance of Tiwaz in a rune reading is thought to signify, or it denotes, a bond that, once made, cannot be broken. However, Tiwaz is also an aggressively masculine rune, so it tends to favor men rather than women. Tiwaz signifies that some opposition is coming your way. So, have in mind that what you must face requires strength of conviction. Remember that the deity represented by this rune is the embodiment of the principles of justice, bravery, honor, and dedication to a cause higher than the individual self. A phase in your life, a change that forces you to go through some hardship, will demand of you courage, self-discipline, tenacity. It's time to grow up. You will finally understand that you must live your own truth rather than submitting to the will of others at this moment. Standing up for those who are too weak to protect themselves. And sometimes we are the weak ones. And it will be time to grow. We must grow so we can protect ourselves. So remember, remain true and calm, and don't let yourself be thrown off balance by the chaotic atmosphere surrounding you at this very moment, pressuring you, trying to bring you down. Trust yourself. Be confident of your own power and wisdom, and the right solution will come up. Any relationship question that is answered by Tiwaz shows that passions may run riot because two strong-minded people will be involved. The danger of jealousy will always be present. If the person asking the question is a woman, however, Tiwaz suggests, or it may signify, that a strong and handsome person will love her fiercely, and that she may have to sacrifice some things major in her life to ensure that her attachment to the person remains strong. When this rune appears in a rune reading as a response to a situation related to romantic commitment, it indicates that this relationship is at its right time. The link between the couple is real. However, there is work to be done together. Tiwaz also indicates success in business. It suggests that legal decisions will go in your favor as well. In these matters, as well as in affairs of heart, an unshakable conviction that what you are doing is right will give you strength and purpose to succeed. Tiwaz is in association with the sun and its powerful energy and the active principle. The desire for conquest is powerful, and in this situation, especially in self-conquest, a lifelong pursuit that calls for attention, individual awareness, and willpower to walk this path set out before you will require compassion and total confidence. If this rune came out in its inverted position in a rune reading, well, it indicates or means the exact opposite, of course. Mental paralysis, over-sacrifice, injustice, imbalance, and defeat. While inverted, Tiwaz shows the consequences of broken vows, broken promises, and the unfulfillment of past oaths. Selfishness, dishonorable actions, and turning one's back on responsibilities are suggested when Tiwaz is inverted. With the appearance of Tiwaz inverted in the rune reading, people should not trust their partners so readily, or any other person that comes into their lives at this point, because in this position, inverted, the rune often denotes a shallow relationship. In a rune reading, inverted Tiwaz indicates over-sacrifice that in the past has drained you of all your energy, which is why now you might feel helpless and without strength. Or over-sacrifice of the present will be vain, and in the future over-sacrifice will be required of you, pushing yourself beyond your own limits, especially emotionally. After all, inverted Tiwaz represents injustice, imbalance, and defeat. It may also signify a futile battle or lost cause. We can't always win, but that doesn't mean we have to stop fighting. Some causes are indeed, unfortunately, lost causes, and there is nothing more you can do. You gave everything for it, and it didn't work, so it's time to move on. Life goes on, so you need to reserve your energy, your inner strength, to fight another battle, another cause, find another higher purpose. Some battles are not worth the trouble. A true warrior, a true leader knows which battles to fight. Sometimes it's wiser to withdraw for a time in order to preserve one's dignity and health, especially mental health. Live to fight another day. Losing a battle doesn't mean you have lost a war, of course. Now, be careful. You might endanger yourself due to hasty or unhealthy actions, and then your own life force is lost and dispersed. Again, self-confidence and faith in all matters is important at this moment. And with that, the authenticity of your path in this world is clearer. Carefully examining your motivations is necessary. Question yourself. Is it self-conquest that worries you or drives you, or are you trying to dominate others? Are you lusting after the final results, or are you simply focused on the task at hand? You will find the answers within yourself and not in exterior advice. When you consult the runes, you are consulting the higher self, nothing more. Trust your own power, always. Alright, my dear friends, I hope you have enjoyed this video. I must remind you that these My Rune series are my own interpretations of the runes. It's something more exoteric, away from the academic work I usually do. Some of the runes I speak about contain certain academic works, certain academic understandings and scientific work, but the great percentage of the videos about the runes I do, these videos such as this one, in great part are my own interpretations. So keep that in mind. And remember, what I say in these videos are not the only interpretations, the only possible truth. This is my interpretation of the runes. Thank you so much for watching. See you on the next video. And as always, tack för det.